Hello, and a very warm welcome to the first of our sessions at World Water Week, entitled Leading for Leaving No One Behind. It's Time to Reset, a gold standard session. My name is Kate Orr, and I'm the Knowledge and Learning Manager with the Australian Government's Water for Women Fund. I'm joined here today by my colleague and co-facilitator, Joanna Mott, Water for Women's Gender and Social Inclusion Advisor. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Kate. Hello, everyone.
Also joining us today are our co-conveners, the Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, and the Australian Water Partnership under Australia Water Partners for Development, together with our partners SMV, the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney, IDE, and Plan International. Together, we are so pleased to be igniting this discussion on how we can challenge inequalities at all levels and contribute to more inclusive and equitable water and wash systems, structures, and services through transformative leadership. A few housekeeping matters for today. Firstly, to ensure greater accessibility for this session, we've enabled Zoom's live transcript closed capture functionality. You can access this using the CC button on the menu tab. One of the presentations does have captions, so feel free to turn on and off at your discretion. We'll also have the chance to answer attendee questions towards the end of the session, so please do add these to the chat box in Pathable as we go. Towards the end of the session, we'll also run a Mentee Poll, so sometime throughout the session you might like to pull up another window in your browser and type www.mentee.com. We'll provide the code later in the session. Our session will start with a presentation from our Water for Women Fund partner, the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney, who will set the scene for us. We'll then deliver a range of presentations from our partners on leadership in WASH, and this will be followed by an opportunity for you all to engage with our panellists through an open and engaging Q&A session. But firstly, to open the session, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Anna-Marie Rienick from the Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT. Anna-Marie is DFAT's Director of the Gender Strategy, Effectiveness and Performance Unit and Senior Gender Specialist within DFAT's Gender Equality Branch. Thank you, Anna-Marie.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna-Marie Rienick and I'm the Senior Gender Specialist in Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we work, live and learn, and pay my respects to them and their cultures, and to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend my respects to the Indigenous peoples of the lands on which you are dialing in from today. I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of DFAT and the Australia Water Partners for Development to this important session at World Water Week, Leading for Leaving No One Behind. It's time to reset. Australia Water Partners for Development, led by DFAT and comprising of the Water for Women Fund and the Australian Water Partnership, are excited to deliver this session, together with all our session co-conveners. I would like to thank the Stockholm International Water Institute for providing us the opportunity to be part of this important event. Leaving no one behind is perhaps easy to say, but it's hard to do, particularly if we continue working and living in ways that are considered business as usual. Let us step back and reflect on what type of leadership is needed to ensure that truly no one is left behind. If there is one silver lining through the current COVID-19 situation, it is recognition that it's time for a reset. Gender and social equality, including disability inclusion, are cornerstones of DFAT's water resource management and WASH programs. We recognize that without equality, there is no real development. If the benefits are not shared, they are not sustainable. It's as simple and as difficult as that. Changing entrenched norms that perpetuate inequality is key to leaving no one behind. But we understand how difficult this can be. Norms cannot be undone and reset overnight. Yet the urgency of COVID-19 has been an impetus for leaders to think and act in transformative ways and ensure no one is left behind. In this session, you will learn from some of our partners about how they are actively supporting the voices and agency of diverse women, people with disabilities, and people from other marginalized groups. and strengthening their visibility and decision-making in the water and wash sectors. Not leaving people behind means bringing people with you, listening and learning from them and supporting their leadership, resilience, and rights. Only in this way can we ensure that they and their communities are counted and accounted for. I trust that this session will spark discussion, reflection, and action on transformative leadership for achieving SDG 6, access to water and sanitation for all, and ensuring our communities are equitable and resilient. I'd like to pass back now to Jose and Kate. Thank you both.
Thank you so much, Anna-Marie. Yes, strong leadership sounds pretty simple, but you're right. There's a lot that goes into it to ensure inequalities are actively addressed for the benefit of all, as you will see from the presentations. I would now like to hand to Naomi Carrad, Research Director, and Deanna Gonzalez, Senior Research Consultant, both from the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney. Naomi and Deanna have prepared a framing presentation for us that will set the scene today, providing a backdrop for transformative leadership in all its diversities and posing the question, how can we be and they'll support transformative leaders? Thank you, Naomi and Deanna.
We're starting our presentations today with a framing presentation, setting the scene for the concepts you will hear about during this session. I'm Naomi Carrad from the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology in Sydney. My colleague Deanna Gonzalez and I have prepared this presentation to explore some of the basic questions related to today's topic. This work draws on research our team has done in partnership with SNV in Bhutan, Laos and Nepal. In this presentation, we're going to explore a few foundational questions. What is transformative leadership? Why is it relevant to inclusive WASH and WRM? What kinds of people make transformative leaders? What do they do and what can they achieve? These are particularly important questions given our current challenges related to the ongoing pandemic and climate change, when we need leaders who prioritise inclusion and equality while grappling with urgent threats. The take-home messages for this particular presentation are firstly that leadership is about bringing people together to work towards a common goal in formal and informal ways. It's a broad definition of leadership and one that sees leadership as happening in all sorts of settings. Leadership for leaving no one behind has a central focus on the voices and needs of those that have been historically marginalised. So a really strong emphasis on inclusion. Transformative leadership goes even further, prioritising inclusion in ways that challenge the norms and systems that perpetuate inequalities, trying to seek transformations in the ways our societies operate. The big question for us today is how can we be or support transformative leaders? And we'd love you to think about this question as you listen to today's presentations and panel discussion. First of all, taking a step back and looking at the idea of leadership, how do we think about leadership? What is leadership? From the research that we've done, a helpful definition is one that talks about leadership as simply being about social influence. It's about bringing people together to work towards common goals. It can happen in both formal and informal settings. For example, leadership happens in workplaces, in government or private sector organisations, in rights holders organisations. It happens within households and family networks, and of course within communities through both formal and informal roles. What we have on this slide is a definition of gender transformative leadership from UN Women. We've chosen to share this today because gender has been the entry point for the research we've been doing on transformative leadership, but we see the concepts as relevant to all forms of transformative leadership. And what we like about this definition is that it emphasises two things. First, that transformative leadership is about paying close attention to formal and informal power structures and discriminatory practices. And second, that transformative leaders will go beyond seeing these inequalities to seeking ways to address them in their organisations and communities. We want to put this language of transformation in the context of typical concepts used in WASH and WRM. The key point here is that in using the word transformation, we're talking about quite radical change towards new standards and structures in the ways societies function. The figure on the lower half of this slide shows a continuum of how an activity engages with gender equality and social inclusion. And it shares the idea that an activity can be harmful. For example, it might actually increase inequalities. It can be instrumental, targeting women as an entry point for wider change. It can be specific, such as a program focused on disability. An activity can be sensitive to diversity in communities, or it can seek to be transformative, to reshape power structures and norms towards greater equality. So what does transformative leadership look like? Across the many ideas on this slide, I want to share 3 themes. Firstly, that transformative leadership tends to happen through partnerships and collaborations. Transformative leaders build relationships and work in partnership with networks of people and organisations rather than as individuals. Second, that transformative leaders are often themselves diverse. They can be women, men, non-binary, people with a disability, people with very different life experiences, though they do commonly share a learning orientation and a capacity for self-reflection. Third, transformative leaders typically hold values aligned with social justice. This motivates leaders to give voice to marginalised people and to challenge harmful social norms. So bringing these ideas back to WASH and WRM, transformative leadership is something that can occur in and through water, sanitation, hygiene, and resource management activities. Transformative leadership can strengthen inclusion, ensuring no one is left behind, and going beyond that, it can positively influence wider social structures towards equality. Transformative leaders take many forms. They can be working in formal positions of authority, such as in government, in service provider roles, in organisations such as rights holders groups, or they can be working within communities to influence norms and practices. Thank you for being here today to share and learn about transformative leadership. And as you listen to the presentations and panel discussion, please do think about how each of us in our roles can either be or support transformative leaders. Building our collective capacity for transformative leadership is a powerful strategy for us to meet the challenges of our time in ways that truly leave no one behind and create more equal, resilient societies.
Thank you so much, Naomi and Deanna. What a great introduction to transformative leadership. I would now like to introduce you all to our first presentation, exploring gender transformative leadership in WASH during the COVID-19 pandemic, with a particular focus on leaders within Bhutan, Lao PDR, and Nepal. This presentation is also brought to you today by Deanna Gonzalez of the Institute for Sustainable Futures. Thank you, Deanna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deanna Gonzalez. I work at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia. Today, I will share insights from a research project we undertook in partnership with SNV, looking at gender transformative leadership in WASH during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our team set out to explore 2 research questions related to inclusion and transformation. First, how are WASH leaders responding to COVID to ensure the needs of marginalized and vulnerable groups are represented and heard? And second, how are they transforming society towards gender equality? This was a qualitative strengths-based study undertaken earlier this year in Bhutan, Lao PDR, and Nepal, and we interviewed 19 leaders working in a range of organizations and roles in the WASH sector. We developed a conceptual framework capturing key dimensions of gender transformative leadership in WASH during the response to COVID-19. It shows that leaders' personal values and traits influence what they do and how they do it, or their leadership style and actions, which in turn leads to gender transformative outcomes. And all of this is influenced by enablers and barriers, which can be personal, collective, and structural factors. I'll give you an example of a finding around actions. Ambika is a leader in Nepal, and she led her team in conducting a WASH sector gap analysis to identify vulnerable groups whose access to sanitation and hand washing facilities was impacted by COVID. In response to the analysis, she promoted GESI-friendly, food-operated hand washing stations in public spaces and supported vulnerable communities to quarantine. An example of an outcome was changes in public's negative perceptions of women leaders. Namgay, a rural leader in Bhutan, said, "My work made people realize the importance of diversity of voices in the decision-making rooms, particularly on the importance and value addition of women leaders." These are only two examples of findings, and if you'd like to know more, you can access all the detailed findings in a research report and learning brief, which are available in the resources for this session. Now I want to share with you the leaders' visions and wishes for the future. We asked them what would be the one change they would make if they could magically snap their fingers and enable better leadership for equality and inclusion. And 5 priority themes were identified. First, end harmful social norms so we can achieve equal rights for all. Second, promote diversity in leadership, which requires challenging traditional ideas of what makes and who can be a good leader. Third, create better education and capacity building opportunities, which are critical to realize the leadership potential of girls, women, and people with disabilities. Fourth, focus on gender mainstreaming in institutions, for example, government agencies and organizations. And lastly, to take an intersectional approach to gender transformative leadership. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a renewed urgency for thinking and doing things differently. And this comes out strongly in the leaders' words and actions. As we rebuild our societies and economies and continue to champion the delivery of essential wash services, let's do so in a way that actively advances gender and social transformation. I hope you're feeling inspired to be and support a gender transformative leader. Thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Gianna. Our next presentation comes to you today from Jess MacArthur, also of the Institute for Sustainable Futures. Jess's presentation will centre on gender and leadership personas in civil society organisations, drawing from lessons from Cambodia. Thank you, Jess.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jess MacArthur, and I'm with the Institute for Sustainable Futures. Over the next 4 minutes, I have the pleasure of presenting some of my doctoral research. My research is part of the wider Water for Women program, and I've been focusing on ID Cambodia's sanitation marketing project for this research. Now, this project helps to create local demand and supply for improved sanitation and is working through a network of sales agents within communities. So my work has been looking at the sales agent network and relevant supporting staff and leadership to identify gender equality outcomes for these staff. Now, all of the staff participated in a gender equality training, and I'm looking at how this training has impacted the experiences of staff members within the program. So to do this, I collected over 200 stories of change. These are retrospective or looking back stories using short audio or text messages, and staff used their own smartphones to share the stories with me last October. I then worked to cluster these stories based on the verbs that they used. Is it a change in what they think or feel or do or have? And then from these different clusters, I created 14 different personas. And a persona is a composite fictional character. So it's almost like a cartoon character, which we use to help understand the different types of changes that are happening for staff. In all, we had over 175 staff who participated in this research. So to understand a little bit of how this change is happening, I'm drawing on a man named Paulo Freire. And Paulo Freire is a Brazilian philosopher who looked at social transformations, looking at empowering communities and individuals to overcome inequalities. And Freire talks about this perception of critical reflection and critical action being these two interconnected aspects. Individuals reflect and then act, and then reflect and then act, and this leads to social transformation. When we looked at our particular personas and we looked at the data that we had, we broke this critical reflection into 2 different categories. One is critical observation and what is critical self-reflection. Critical observation being looking at other people and observing change, and critical reflection is looking inside and reflecting internally. Now you can see here from this diagram that about 50% of our staff were critical reflectors and about 50% were critical actors. And the idea here is that this isn't necessarily a linear progression, but we want to move staff towards ultimately being actors within the change. And this is not just staff, this is leaders, but all across the chain. So individuals who have particular power or authority within a structure and those who may not. How do we encourage them to be actors within the system? So one particular persona that I'd like to share with you is a gentleman persona, and this is as a man who reflects 11 different individuals within the project. And this gentleman in leadership is now advocating for his female colleagues at work. And ultimately, we can see the different quotations here, but ultimately it came from a period of self-reflection where this gentleman was thinking about how women now are actually able to go to remote areas and actually do the work he thought was only accessible to men. They're actually able to network with government officials and are quite good at it. And so this process of reflection that led then to him acting. And this action is talking about advocating for other women and encouraging not only women to be part of different things, but also encouraging his fellow male colleagues to also include women in different aspects. And so we see from this that we want to move individuals through this process of observation, reflection, and action. And the idea being that transformative leadership is not just focused on women's leadership, but ultimately also focused on male leadership that uses critical reflection to build into action.
Thank you so much, Jess. And just a reminder to all our attendees, if you have any questions for any of our presenters and conveners, please do add these to the chat box in Pathable. We now move to Solomon Islands in the Pacific, where we'll hear from Enif Petsakibo, the Senior WASH Officer from Live and Learn Environmental Education in Solomon Islands, on enabling community leadership for transformative WASH. Thank you, Enif.
My name is Enif Petsakibo. I'm a Senior WASH Officer for the New Times New Target program, which is implemented in Northwest and West Guadalcanal under Live and Learn in partnership with Plan International. Enabling community leadership for transformative WASH is vitally important. It is evident that through the approaches implemented within the program encourages and promotes inclusiveness in leadership roles and responsibility as a driver towards positive outcomes in WASH. In the water safety improvement planning approach, it allows the community to be actively involved in raising issues on water management. Women and men realize their unique contributions and acknowledging that such task demonstrates leadership. We have witnessed that when communities take on the necessary leadership, it provides an avenue for issues relating to water to be shared and brings about collective actions. This approach also allows the process of self-realization through sharing of experiences. It provides room for aspirations and participation in leadership roles, especially for females and youths, offering the opportunity to build the capacity so that they actively participate in the activities. For example, the Good Water Plan Toolkit promotes ownership and valuing water resources. Different sections of the population are involved and tasks can be delegated with equal participation from community members. This is evident in Satona Ward 4, our project site. Leadership role vested on the Water Committee is again being delegated to zone representatives who take on the leadership role to ensure that actions planned are being implemented by individuals, zone, or community as a whole. Community strength assessment gives the opportunity for facilitators, male and female participants, to discuss and serve that unique strengths and potentials do exist within the community and themselves as individuals. Power dynamics are also identified, and this helps the program to understand the context of the community better at hand. With the community-led total sanitation, the pre-triggering session involves the leaders that have been identified prior. These leaders were triggered in the approach, then supported the rollout in the community. For example, in Ward 1, zone leaders have made it a priority to ensure individual households do take on the leadership challenge despite of culture as a barrier to advocating for no open defecation. Capacity building and technical training to leaders is welcomed by both male and female as information is power. With the gender wash monitoring tool, it appreciates the difference identified in the household wash loads. Leadership and participation of different target groups within the community on decision making. Facilitating this session and providing a space where individuals acknowledge the potentials and importance of involving young people in decision making and delegating leadership responsibility to have experience. For example, aspirations highlighted have shown that there is desire and understanding on the need to encourage and share leadership roles and responsibility in WAS so that tasks can be completed and there is ownership. All the above implemented approaches do acknowledge that if we encourage and value the importance of empowering individuals, male and female, who have the potential to lead, we will transform WASH in different dimensions.
Thank you so much, Enif. We'll now move finally back to Cambodia, where we'll hear from Tyler Kazol, WASH Program Manager with IDE in Cambodia. Tyler will present to us today on women entrepreneurs leading to end open definition. Thank you, open defecation. Thank you, Tyler.
Hi, my name is Tyler Kazol, and I'm the WASH Program Manager for IDE Cambodia. IDE's WASH program, our core WASH program, is called Sanitation Marketing Scale Up. We're in our third phase, SMSU3, and we're working with support from Australian Aid, Stone Family Foundation, UNICEF, and USAID. So what we do is we first start by talking with a lot of people, and we design products to context using human-centered design. That's how we build low-cost, aspirational, and locally sourceable products. After that, we work to power up local entrepreneurs so that they can produce and distribute these products. We work to support them with training, capacity building. And last, we have a team of sales agents. Now, these sales agents go out and they do door-to-door sales presentations and generate sanitation product demand. This is how we do behavior change. So after a sales agent will sell a product, we'll send that to a latrine business owner, and then that business owner will deliver the product, install it, and develop a relationship with the customer. Now, these entrepreneurs, these are our change makers. We know that as sanitation coverage increases, attention and funding for this issue is decreasing. So really, one of the best positioned actors to continue to be incentivized to reach those last households without toilets, well, those are local entrepreneurs. Now, the local entrepreneurs that we work with, the vast majority are family businesses. About 95% of the 70 that we work with are family businesses. And what we know is that businesses with at least more than one family member playing a key role in the business can earn more than businesses with just limited family involvement, by about 60% more revenue per month. Now, being a family business can also be a challenge, and about 57% of all of the IDE affiliated businesses are not separating their business from household finances. This is especially an issue because women are working as the financial managers in most of the businesses. And we know that in Cambodia, a lot of women are working to manage finances in their households too. We know that a lot of women are experiencing pressure to spend on behalf of their family, both direct and indirect family. And we've been told by a lot of our female entrepreneurs that they've had to siphon critical business revenue to support a family expense. So unfortunately as well, we know that about 77% of our entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, are not paying themselves a salary. So what we've been doing is teamed up with an organization called She Investments. And the goal has been to support female business leaders to build their skills, build their management capacity, and make a more sustainable sanitation enterprise. First thing that we do is secure family buy-in. We make sure that the husband is engaged from day one. After that, we work with the women to develop financial literacy and debt management. We talk about separating business versus household finances, paying oneself a salary, and other key business necessities. We also make a point to describe gender equality concepts in theory. We know that we're having an impact. Here on the left is Ms. Ramdul Sovan. Sovan told me, I have the same right to make decisions as my husband. She told me that while standing next to Mr. Boon Singh, who you can see there. And Mr. Boon Singh, her husband, Smiled and nodded, agreed when Sivan told me not only has she set her salary, but she set his too, and things are working really well. Now, Ms. Sivan is one of quite a few entrepreneurs that we're working with who've experienced similar stories. Now, we know in rural Cambodia, in order to leave no one behind, in order to reach every household that does not have a toilet, we need to be supporting local businesses. Now, in order to be supporting local businesses, we need to be supporting the female leaders who are behind them. At IDE Cambodia, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tyler. This brings us to the end of our presentations. So just one last reminder, if there is any questions from the suite of presentations that you've seen today, please pop these into the chat box in Pathable. I'd now like to hand over to my co-facilitator, Joanna Mott. Joyce will introduce our panel today, and then we'll move to questions. Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you to all our presenters. There is so much to digest and reflect on, and I would like to welcome and introduce the panelists who will help us do exactly that. So welcome Anif and Jess, who you already know from their presentations in this session. Anif Petsakibo, Senior WASH Officer, Live and Learn Environmental Education in the Solomon Islands. Jess MacArthur, Research Consultant from the Institute for Sustainable Futures at UTS. And we're having joining us today, Rana Abdel Sattar, WASH Innovation and Partnerships Manager from IDE Cambodia, as well as Sarah Ransom, Partnerships and Impact Lead from the Australian Water Partnership. And also joining us today is Sering Choden, Gender and Social Inclusion Advisor for SMV based in Bhutan. And again, just a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and Kate will be monitoring to see what questions come up. We hope there'll be time for to address a few. So to get the ball rolling, I'll start with a question for each of the panelists. Panelists, welcome. And I might start with Sering. Sering, each of the presentations highlighted the link between leadership and leaving no one behind for ensuring improved WASH access for all. To you, what is the critical element or elements of leadership that makes this possible?
Thank you, Jobs. Good morning, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So to me, leaders with certain personal values and beliefs that influence their leadership style and actions, which can lead to transformative outcomes, and also leaders that are being able to capitalize on their support system, both in their personal and professional lives, are critical elements of leadership that ensures no one is left behind. For example, in Bhutan, we have the Minister for Health, Lempo Dichen, and Gapnamge Pelden, who hold strong feminist values and embodied principles of gender equity and social justice. Both these leaders exhibit astounding humility, courage, and a strong desire to help others, both in their personal and professional lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sering. So very strong values, and I like the way you highlight the importance of feminist values with courage and humility. Okay, and for you, Jess, what are the critical elements or elements of leadership that makes it possible, do you think?
Yeah, I think part of it is recognizing a better version of a flourishing world. So I like what Shearing said as well, but I'd like to just expand. I think a lot of, especially male leaders that we spoke to, felt like their worlds were shrinking. And so finding a way to redefine and recontextualize a better flourishing world in which diversity and leadership is an important aspect, I think is a great way to explain that. So that's what I would say, define.
Tess, would you just be able to just expand on that notion of the world is shrinking?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the themes that came out for several of our men said that when they felt like they were being asked to give leadership roles to women or expand they felt like their power and their roles were shrinking. And so we began to start thinking about how do we talk about the pie growing instead of their part of the pie shrinking. And that comes from a kind of group articulation of what a flourishing world might look like for that community.
Really interesting, Jess, that notion of shared visions and shared responsibility. Thank you. Sarah, coming from the WRM sector, what would you see as the critical elements of leadership relating to effective water resource management? How do these presentations resonate with you on transformative leadership?
Thanks, Joyce. For me, the presentations resonate very strongly. I don't think there's a great deal of difference between the kind of personal characteristics and the important attributes that you see in transformative leaders in WRM as opposed to WASH. So two that I wanted to draw out just from listening to the presentations and also from our experience in AWP is there's an attribute of courage which really comes across, and you can see that in people's personal lives. It was really interesting to hear Naomi's points earlier about transformative leaders often coming from a background that's experiences maybe a bit of struggle getting to the point where they are, and that's, you know, becomes evident in personal courage, in my view. And then that personal courage comes out in public life and in that leadership. And the second point I wanted to raise as an attribute of leaders, I think, is persistence. And that's just recognizing that real change takes a lot of time, and you need a lot of deep personal commitment and personal fortitude to kind of see that through, particularly if you start in a situation where people are against you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, that's really interesting that how you also raise courage, like Sarah, as a key critical element, and courage to struggle, because of the struggle. And I think that comes back a lot to the barriers that came out in Diana and Naomi's presentations as well. The barriers to transformation can be quite significant. Thanks very much, Sarah. Enif, in supporting leadership for transformative WASH outcomes, your fantastic presentation really highlighted the aspirations of women and youth at community level. Can you name one strategy that has been successful in supporting women and youth leadership at community level, and one challenge that you're still working to overcome in the work that you're doing?
Okay, thank you very much. One of the approaches that we have seen that is successful in the areas which we've been implementing our WASH activities is one of the tools that we've been using, which is called the Gender WASH Monitoring Tool. And that tool is very inclusive and helps individuals to realize their contributions, their unique contributions in WASH. While I'm saying this, we have seen that it has given way or paved way for the participation or involvement of youths and women in different areas in water and sanitation, especially. In the past, it has not been. But one of the challenges with this is that it has not been taken lightly, because some perceptions about this is that it's taking away powers from some people, like the males, but the others, they have acknowledged that the uniqueness of contributions individuals, whether youths or women, do play in the role of leadership in these specific areas is very important. Yeah, so that is what we have identified. Although it might have it might have not been it might not have been acknowledged for some, but this is what we have experienced and have seen in some of the communities that we've been working. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anif. That's really interesting and quite similar what you're saying, you know, that idea of taking away powers, that it's a perception of some. It's quite similar or resonant to what Jess was saying around the sense of a shrinking world. But really, you know, interesting how, you know, by that work that you're doing in acknowledging the unique contributions of different parts of the community, how that's slowly starting to shift that perception. Thank you. Okay, so wondering if there's any questions from the audience. Kate?
Yeah, there is. Joyce, there's quite a few questions coming through. So thanks
Fantastic.
everyone who is starting to add your questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can today. And for those that we can't, we'll also address those in the chat box and later as well. But there's a question from Megan Tucker. Does the panel have any recommendations for promoting or engaging persons with disability in leadership roles or decision-making in WASH? I know, Sering, that's something that SMV's been doing quite a bit of. So we still got Sering?
Yep.
Might be
Oh,
frozen.
I think that's frozen. I think that might be a good question for Rana, if Sering's having trouble.
Oh, we've got Sering back. Rana, did you want to answer, or should we pass to Sering?
Sure. I mean, for disability, what IDE has done is providing products to allow that are disability friendly, with a lot of conscious decisions about how we define disability, including you know, defining not having it as just a very obvious disability, but rather something that, you know, if someone's pregnant, if someone's old, if someone is has some sight issues, so it's not labeling something and having it as a discriminatory factor. So it's a way to encourage households to speak for themselves and be able to do a decision making around purchasing products that are in their best interest. In addition, we provide customized ways for the households to talk with the latrine business owners to make sure that it's the best height for hand washing access, for example, or to be able to use the toilet in general.
Thanks, Rana. Perhaps Sering might like to add to that as well. Did you get the question, Sering?
Yep. So if I heard it correctly, we're thinking about how our organizations or the different programs that we work in are including people with disabilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for SMB particularly, it's very critical for us when we implement our programs to bring the voices of people with disabilities in our WASH decision-making forums. And how do we do that? We do that by investing in the capacity building of our the DPOs that we work with, and also by identifying disability champions and then investing in their capacity, particularly on WASH. And then at the same time, we also invest in the capacity building of the WASH sector on disability inclusion. So this has greatly enabled us in bringing the voices of people with disabilities in WASH decision-making forums, whereby they're able to influence the different decisions with regard to choosing of the sanitation and hygiene technologies, but also in terms of ensuring that whatever services the WASH sector is providing in our respective program areas, it is accessible, including for people with disabilities.
Thanks, Sering. So having a really strong system strengthening approach through including people with disabilities and DPOs in those decision-making fora is critical for those outcomes. And I just wonder, just before we move on to the next question, Sarah, if you, in terms of with WRM, the WRM sector, you know, really embedding gender and social transformation into the system strengthening work, how do you see that in terms of ensuring equitable and inclusive practices become the norm rather than stay as the exception?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, I really support what others have already said. But I guess for us, I think often it can be a little overwhelming if you're working at a systems level. There's a lot of things to think about and a lot of complexity. So for me, the approach should always be just to start with the people and start to see the people inside the problem, or the people as the users of the infrastructure, or the people in the situation that you're trying to influence. Yeah, so that's a lot about just speaking to people. So, you know, in the example of disability, often speaking with disability rights organisations from the start is a good place to go to get their insights and to get their views on what's happening. I think often once you start to speak to people, then all the different partners that you're trying to work with can start to see things from different perspectives than perhaps they started with. So that's a benefit to everybody. Yeah, just a final thought, I guess, on that is often when we're working with systems change, we need to sometimes slow down and adopt different practice and different ways of working. So, you know, potentially coming in with an engineering mindset and trying to solve problems really fast is not going to be an approach that captures all of the systemic change that we're trying to achieve in development. And there's nothing that substitutes for good listening, in my view, as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Listening, partnership, and trying new things, thinking differently. That's great. Kate, do we have any more questions? I think we have 4 more minutes.
Yeah, we do. And this is probably one for most of our panel that have come across from Bronwyn Powell at the International Water Centre. She's interested, what suggestions do the panels have for addressing or questioning unconscious bias and cultural norms when you're promoting diversity in leaders? Which is a great question. And how can the benefit of diversity be quantified for doubters or those that might stand to lose the power? Great question.
Great question. Who would like to have a go at that one?
I'm happy to give it a spin. I'm not sure that I'm going to have all of the answers here, but
we've got
I'll
a couple
give it
of minutes left. Thanks,
yeah,
Jess.
I think one of the most important things for this is giving people safe spaces to talk openly and freely. And one of the things that I would highlight is I'm traditionally quite a skeptic of gender training. I've been through gender trainings myself. But I think I was really inspired and encouraged to see how the gender training that the team did actually really did change and a lot of people's mindsets. And I think part of the reason for that was giving people safe spaces and opportunities to really speak through these challenges for these doubters, if you will, of being able to express that and to discuss that and to be open and honest about it, and not in a judgmental way, but in a safe space for them to say that I do feel like my power is shrinking. What does that mean for me? And to be able to have a chance to have a conversation about it. And I think having those open and honest conversations can be really valuable. Hard, but valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, critical, Jess. Thank you for that. The importance of safe spaces and yeah, being able to have that. It's a really important do no harm aspect of supporting transformative leadership. Thank you. I think we've run out of time now, Kate. Unless there's one more.
We probably have time for maybe one more response to that question. We probably don't have time.
Okay. Yeah.
For some more questions.
Anyone else would like to add to that? Sari?
Yeah, I'll go here. Okay. Thank you very much. We're talking about the space. For us, we've been promoting different approaches. Like, for example, if we're working in the community, we've been implementing different approaches in the community. So like, we have built the confidence of people over time. And also we have given them, in different approaches, like the different perception of leadership. so that they can see that it's not taking powers away from them or taking the leadership roles away from them, but to see it at a different dimension, like it's an advantage. Sharing the leadership role for others so that you can be like involved and engage in other things. So when doing that, people realize that that's an opportunity to help others who are younger or the women taking on the leadership. It's a positive thing, and it's not like taking powers of them as males and trying to promote something from a child, like men have been in there all along and now we want women to take on that. No, the approaches that we've been promoting helps them so that they realize that it's trying to promote participation. It's trying to promote all who are part of the community to be involved because of their contributions and their uniqueness to support whatever WASH initiatives is going on in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enif, and that the importance around that shared leadership and shared vision, and yeah, really acknowledging the unique aspects or the unique contributions of everyone in the community. Thank you. Okay, thank you all. I think we've run out of time there for Q&A, but thank you for drawing out all those important lessons to the panelists and the insights and reflections about leadership and how it can make a real difference. At the very end, we will highlight some key resources that will enable further exploration on thinking, acting, and learning in transformative ways. Now it is the audience's turn to reflect and act. So I'm inviting you to all go to the Mentimeter link at the top of your screen and in the chat and have a go at answering the following question. What will you do to be a transformative leader or to support transformative leadership so no one is left behind? And it's an open-ended Mentee, and just a reminder that everyone's responses are anonymous. So please feel free, just what comes to mind, what would you like to do? Just have a couple of minutes on this. See what comes through. Think about actions in my home. Great one. Yes, so really starting from the personal level. And in the household where there's often, strong dynamics, or can be. Yep. Keep listening, always keep listening to the multiple stories and narratives surrounding an issue. I think that came out strongly from a lot of people, the importance of listening. Recognizing better the diversity in leaders and the strengths they can all bring to the sector. Having a clear goal in mind of what an ideal outcome would be, as well as a second best outcome. Ah, interesting. Listening better again. Blind recruitment to assist in maximising diversity in program teams. Okay, so that's to address bias. Speak up and challenging harmful norms and encouraging others to do so. That came out pretty strong in the presentations as well. Be open to a greater ambition for transformation to happen in our work. I would try to look into my project team. Do I have the best team? Or yeah, we're the most diverse team, perhaps. I will continue to rock the boat and challenge my colleagues and leadership in my role as the Jessie specialist. All while continuing to be aware of my own biases and trying to change those. So yes, starting from yourself and recognizing your own biases. Listening again, supporting younger women in their work and ambitions. Oh gosh, there's lots here. As a man in position of power, I will listen, provide space and support voices of others without that privilege. Share with others around me. General public GTL literacy. Elect gender transformation leaders, exclamation mark, nice one. Will walk my talk, generating strong values related to inclusivity and diversity in work and personal life. So again, the importance of the personal. Great. Okay, I think I've got the bell, but so many rich range of ideas and actions coming out from the Mentee here. And many that are quite diverse. There's quite a range, but there's also some commonalities highlighted, particularly around the listening and the personal aspects of being a transformative leader. Em, can you please, we'll go to the next slide. So now I'd just like to finish with some key takeaways from this session. So firstly, as Anne-Marie Rearink acknowledged it in her opening remarks, the silver lining. COVID-19 has provided an impetus for transformative leadership and the increasing urgency to leave no one behind in access to water and wash services. We must really take hold of this opportunity to make real and lasting change. Diana's presentation showed us how transformative leaders are doing this through their research that they did in Laos, Nepal, and Bhutan. Secondly, the importance of diversity in decision-making, and that came out quite a bit in the Mentee as well. Transformative leadership means changing inequalities that are embedded in systems, norms, and structures to enable diverse voices at the table. This is critical to leaving no one behind. And Anif showed how bringing the voices of women and youth in WASH community planning processes in the Solomon Islands through the careful identification of power dynamics resulted in more equitable and effective collective action. Third, from the margins to the centre, transformative leaders find ways to empower the marginalised to inform inclusive decision-making. All the presentations illustrated examples of how leaders are doing this on a range of levels: family, community, workplace, institutions, and business. They're all important. Fourth, partnership is indeed the new leadership, and that also came through the presentations. Transformative leaders understand that transformative impact is best brought about through partnerships and collaboration. We saw in Tyler's presentation how this made a difference in supporting women entrepreneurs in Cambodia through the partnership with She Investments. And finally, from observation to reflection to action, supporting transformative leadership requires facilitating opportunities for critical reflection, and I would also add safe spaces, which can then build into critical action. We saw the importance of this in Jess's presentation, in which the IDE staff in Cambodia involved in the gender equality training were encouraged to move from reflection to action towards gender equality initiatives. So again, a big thank you to all the presenters and panelists for what you have shared with us today, and also to all of you for making the time to be part of this session and sharing your insights and experience. We hope you've enjoyed this session and it gave you good food for thought. In finishing, we are pleased to launch the Transformative Trio, 3 fun products that examines aspects of transformation in WASH. So firstly, you can see ISF and SMV's Gender Transformative Leadership in WASH during COVID-19 learning brief and the more detailed research report on which Naomi and Diana's presentations were based. This research initiative was developed under one of the Australian Government Water for Women COVID pivot projects. Secondly, you can see the Towards Transformation in WASH Jessie self-assessment tool, a tool that was developed collaboratively with Water for Women Fund Partners and the Sanitation Learning Hub at the Institute for Development Studies in the UK. This is a tool that supports WASH implementing and research organisations to undertake reflective practice in order to strengthen Jessie transformation in their programming and organisation. And the third you can see is the Jessie Change Qualitative Methods Digital Toolkit, otherwise known as the Qualkit, which was designed and developed by ISF for equipping practitioners at all levels with the tools, techniques and resources to undertake remote MEL and bring the voices of women and the marginalised to the centre of WASH programming. You'll be able to find the Transformative Trio resources in the files from this session on Pathable, along with other useful resources relevant to this topic. We encourage those of you who are looking to strengthen Jessie transformation efforts within your own programming and organisation to take a look at these resources. We hope you find them useful. If you have any questions at all, feel free to contact us through the Water for Women email address in the chat. Wishing you all the very best in taking forward your action, either as a transformative leader or supporting transformative leadership. Leading from behind can be very powerful in leading for leaving no one behind. Thank you all and stay safe.